الله 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 نور السماوات والأرض Lantern of light evolving together.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all our respected viewers. Once again, this is your host Sakeena Habib, and I would like to welcome you all on Lantern of Light's Mental Health Wellbeing podcast once again. If you remember, last time we had done part one of the forgiveness talk conversation with Sister Uzma Naqvi, and we discussed a lot of key aspects about what does forgiveness mean from an emotional perspective. Am I waiting for an apology before I forgive? Who am I ultimately hurting by not forgiving? And we really dug deep into the depths of how important it is to forgive the other person so that we can also enhance our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and be able to form other relationships with other people who are related to that person, and so much more. And as I said, that on today's program, we are going to be now coming to the practical parts of it, the practical bits into how can we, do this, in a more physical manner, in a more emotional manner, in a more psychological manner, which of course Sister Uzma Naqvi will be guiding us through. So, inshallah, before we move on to our conversation, I would just like to encourage each one of you to make sure to like today's program, share this program as much as possible. Please share your comments and feedback as much as possible. And please donate generously on our website, www.lanternoflight.org.uk. I would like to welcome our esteemed guest, Sister Uzma Naqvi, once again on board. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you doing today?
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me again. It's a pleasure to be here.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. It was an absolute pleasure to have you in the first discussion, and also a huge thanks for the wonderful meditation that we had done towards the end of the program. It was very much healing, and it gave a very different energy. I personally felt very good, so thank you for that. Now, Sister Uzma, on today's program, I have a couple of challenging questions to ask you when it comes to forgiveness. My first question is that what do I hope to achieve by forgiving this person?
Nice, really good question. So when we contemplate forgiveness or forgiving someone who hurt us, especially someone who hasn't apologized, because that's what we're mainly talking about in these sessions, it is really essential to understand that forgiveness is not about changing them. We're not looking to alter the way they are. It's not about we're going to do something and they're going to do something different, and then we're going to be able to forgive. This is really, I said in this last session as well, this is not about them, almost nothing to do with them. This is your journey. This is your own, these are steps that you're taking. It's about transforming your own life. So by forgiving, we're basically setting ourselves free from holding on to the past hurt that has been done to us. And ultimately, forgiveness is a gift that we give to ourselves. So if you see it as a gift, who doesn't like receiving gifts? And especially gifts that are going to free us, it means that you're releasing emotional and mental and even spiritual weight that really holds us back in a lot of ways. And psychologically, forgiveness allows us to really let go of the need of external validation for closure. So I'm only going to feel better if he or she or they acknowledge that they hurt me, they took away my peace, they robbed me from my childhood or from my marriage or for whatever circumstances. If they acknowledge that they did that, that's when I'll be able to say that finally I got the closure. Look at the amount of lack of autonomy we have when we think of it this way. By forgiving, we take that power back. We say, I'm not dependent on you to be able to feel free and feel better within myself. I can do that all by myself. And we acknowledge that while we may never ever get that apology or even an acknowledgement that we deserve, we don't need it to reclaim that peace that we already hold within ourselves. We just need to tap into it. And so this self-directed approach to forgiveness really shifts the focus from waiting for others to taking charge of our own well-being. And that's a very powerful state to be. And emotionally, we hope to achieve what we really want to and hope to achieve from forgiveness is relief. It's like finally taking that breath, and it's free of anger. And when people are listening to this, sometimes somebody might say, I don't really feel that stressed. Yeah, I might not forgive them, but I don't feel that stress. You don't even know the ways that lack of forgiveness actually affects you in your life, because you've stopped acknowledging that forgiveness actually plays any role in your life. But subconsciously, almost every decision you make, every interaction you have, every person you have any communication with, anything that you're doing in your life is actually very much dictated by the lack of forgiveness. So if you're in that space thinking, I haven't forgiven, but it doesn't bother me, I invite you and encourage you to rethink that, because holding on to resentment often keeps really painful emotions alive, but sometimes we've disassociated from them. And so it creates this ongoing cycle of hurt. So we might be encountering new set of circumstances that are actually hurtful, but we don't relate it to the past hurt because we think it's got nothing to do with it. I've already forgotten and forgiven about that person. But actually, it's very much connected. We're attracting more of wherever we are vibrationally internally. So if we don't heal, we're just going to keep getting more and more and more of the same, right? And so forgiveness allows us to find release, to let go of the bitterness, to let go of the anger, and to make space for more fulfilling emotions like peace, like love, like joy, like gratitude, which we all deserve. And in doing that, we free ourselves from these lingering shadow, subconscious level of pain that is slowly burning us from the inside, and it takes us away from any new feeling of experiencing new and better relationships. From a spiritual perspective, forgiveness really helps us to connect more deeply with our Lord, and create these intrinsic values. We trust ourselves more. We feel more empowered. Forgiveness is the path to inner peace and ultimate tawakkul, teaching us to release the anger and the resentment from the outside world that we live in. Through forgiveness, we can see how resilient we actually are, how capable we are of rising above the pain. And this data, as we collect it about ourselves, is life-changing, because we grow in confidence when we're able to do something that we thought once was completely impossible. We've been able to do it. We have our mind hold these memories. It knows that you now have the capability to let go of something that was so dear, and not dear in a healthy way, but in a negative way, but still dear. It creates that familiarity zone that we just want to harbor and stay inside of. And so this act becomes a reflection of strength and grace. And we aspire to embody by handling pain and forgiveness in the way that we can. And that in turn, even if we never speak about it to our children, the fact that they watch us go through that in a graceful manner, let go of something and just trusting Allah, it builds tawakkul into them as well. So morally, forgiveness can also act as kindness to yourself. In forgiving, we're choosing to allow the action of we're not allowing the action of other people to continue defining and limiting us. So it's the path to lots of freedom. And in the Holy Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and the retribution for an evil act is an evil act, just one like it, but whoever pardons and makes reconciliation, his reward is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what is Allah saying? Allah is saying that, forgiveness brings these divine rewards. You can act evil with somebody who acted evil to you, but why not seek peace? Why not grow spiritually? Why not connect with yourself and connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? These are also options available to you. And so Imam Ali Islam says, forgiveness is the zenith of nobility, which is building your character. You leave a legacy of enabling us, like achieving this inner peace and nobility, noble character, reflecting to our higher selves. That's what our soul wants. It wants to elevate. These are the acts that it elevates by, because it's tazkiyatun nafs. We are cleansing our soul along the way as we are being able to forgive. So very powerful things to be able to do if we actually manage to do them.
Now comes the final question for the program, which we have actually put up as a topic on its own, and everybody wants to know: can I forgive someone who isn't sorry? So now this is the main, the cake, the cherry of the cake that needs to be answered. Yeah.
So as we've been highlighting throughout the last program and this program as well, yes, it is 1000% absolutely possible to forgive someone who is not sorry. And in many ways, this type of forgiveness can actually be more transformative, more empowering than if somebody did ask for forgiveness and then we forgave them. Forgiving without an apology is often the more difficult path to take, because we feel that we're kind of letting the other person off the hook. We've kind of given them the message that you're okay to like break my boundaries and hurt me in this way, and you've gotten away with it, kind of thing. And almost like a message to ourselves that we're diminishing our own pain that we experienced in the past. However, if we switch this view and look at it in a different way, have a different perspective in the way that we're viewing it, true forgiveness is not about the other person. That's what we've said all along. It's about reclaiming your own peace and freeing yourself from the weight of resentment. So if you think about it this way, separate your experience from yourself, because often we've interlinked them so much that we think they're one and the same, and they're not. And then being able to say, it's the higher path, more noble path, to be able to forgive someone who actually hasn't even sought forgiveness from me. And that will actually give me more in turn. We've talked about the rewards that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been talking about. Physically and psychologically, waiting for an apology obviously keeps us emotionally binded with that person who hurt us. So when we forgive someone who isn't sorry, we are choosing to free ourselves from that dependency, recognizing that we don't actually need validation or remorse to move on. This shift in focus, from needing closure. There's so much about it on social media these days that closure is so necessary. Closure has to be done a certain way. You don't need to be dictated by all of those things. We've got so much peace within our faith. It's kind of black and white for us. Sometimes we might not have the exact steps we need to take, and there are many, many, many things you can do. But you don't need permission from somebody else to say you should or you shouldn't. You should look at it this way. You shouldn't look. The end point is that you have the ability to forgive someone, even if they've said not said sorry. And it's actually the better way to forgive someone, because it empowers you and it helps you regain that inner strength. And so practically, forgiving without an apology allows us for the power to come back. We stop waiting for the other person to change or to make things right again. We find it within ourselves to find that closure, to decide to let go, because it's a decision and you have a free will and you can make a decision at any time, and ultimately embark on the journey of inner healing and peace. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, in Surah Fussilat, 41, verse number 34, he says, repel evil by that deed which is better. So in the last verse, he was saying, you can do the same, evil by evil, but then you have the other path to choose, which is the higher one, is to forgive, right? But now in this verse, he's saying, repel evil by that deed which is better. And thereupon, the one whom between you and Allah, between you and him is enmity, will become as though he was a devoted friend. That is the power of your perspective. Somebody that you held as an enemy, you can shift within yourself. You can view that situation in a completely different way. You can add a whole different meaning to it, to the point where you can actually start to view them as a devoted friend. How might we do that? Because that sounds really absurd to think that somebody who hurt you like this, you can think of them as a friend. I can tell you, I went through a divorce, a very difficult set of circumstances and everything. Could have been emotionally very, very bitter. But I took the time to think, what great things did I get out of this relationship? It came to an end in a very bitter way, and it could have been dealt with in a whole different way by the other person. But having learned about healing And having gone through this whole process and having so many tools under my belt, I was able to utilize them in a time when it actually matters, because we can always talk the talk. The actual walk is when it's happening to you. Are you able to implement those changes? And how do you view that person who hurt you so badly, abandoned you, did all the rejecting and all everything that you never wanted, to view them as a devoted friend? Well, by dissecting what good things, what transferable skills I got from this, what I learned about the pain and the suffering and the past traumas that I hadn't been able to, heal from, and all those things that I can now utilize going forward, has made me so much stronger than I ever was. And so I'm grateful to him for being so terrible to me, because it's taught me so much about my own self and so much about how strong I actually am as a person, that I would never have been able to view. I would never have been able to find that inner peace if I didn't see it that way, if I didn't break down like what I actually learned from this. And lastly, Imam Ali Islam says, forgive even when the other person does not apologize, for it is a sign of magnanimity. And we have the potential to be Ashraf al-Makhluk. And that is what Imam Ali Islam is reminding us, that forgiveness is unconditional, reflecting a heart that has risen above the pain is the greater role to take.
Thank you for sharing also about your personal journey. Indeed, it is very difficult sometimes to forgive someone who's very close. I mean, if someone if you've been very close to in a relationship, and definitely that doesn't come easy. And as you said, that there are some tools that you yourself need to figure out on how you can improve yourself, self-improve, and sometimes you are thankful to that person for opening a doorway for you to have become a better version of yourself. Maybe there were some things that you didn't know you excel in, that you excel in a much better way. And yeah, I agree with you on that as well. It happens a lot of times. Now, Sister Uzma, I want you to share with us on some steps, like what steps can for example, I take to begin the forgiveness process.
So many things that we can do to start the process of forgiveness. We have to first stop thinking about forgiveness. And it's a funny thing to say, like, to start the process of forgiveness, we're going to stop thinking about forgiveness. Why do I say that? It's because, like I said, forgiveness is the byproduct of healing. So instead of focusing so hard on, I need to forgive, I should forgive, forgiveness is a better road, Allah will be pleased with me, la 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 la, so much pressure to forgive, put forgiveness aside. Let's not even think about forgiveness. And then pivot your energy, your thoughts, your feelings towards your own healing. Where have I got the gaps? Why am I not even able to heal or forgive? Because lack of forgiveness is lack of healing, right? So just shift the perspective altogether, because there's too much pressure added to forgiveness, because forgiveness ultimately attaches you to another person that you feel dependent on to be able to forgive. So if we put the whole chapter of forgiveness to a side and think myself, right? When you genuinely embark on a journey of self-healing, forgiveness will naturally, you can't miss it. It's there in your life. Healing starts by understanding the energy that's going on within you. We're energetic beings. There's vibrational frequencies emitting out of us all the time. And they are great when we are internally great, and they are terrible when we are internally terrible, even if we are able to pretend to be great. So that level of integrity with yourself is necessary in order for you to know where you are. What kind of energy are you emitting? Energy is formed in different patterns, right? So that those patterns determine what it becomes. So good or bad energy will come from whatever it is, that the patterns that you're creating on the inside of you. When we feel resentment, this is a form of energy, right? And it takes the shape of unwanted patterns inside of us. We need to create patterns that turn the energy that we have inside of us, to wanted patterns, to things that we actually want to create in our lives. So the first step is going to be, what do I want for myself? How do I want to be in my character? What do I want to be known for? What legacy do I want to create? Who do I want to be? Right? And just be a detective of yourself. This is who you want to be. and then now collect data for 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever it's going to take you, to see what is it that you're actually emitting out there. What is it that you are, when you open your mouth, when you say your words, when you interact with other people, when you make decisions, what are you actually thinking about? What patterns are naturally coming out of you? So the healing process of changing energy to the opposite to what it is, right? Before we can change it to the opposite to what it is, we have to know what it is in the first place. What do we want? What do we have? What do we want to change it to? Right? So these are the first patterns. So the unwanted patterns that we create because there were some needs that weren't met. So in my case, in a divorce, there were certain needs that were not being met. Or maybe in the other person's case, from me, there were certain needs that weren't being met. So unwanted patterns are created because we're fighting to get those needs met, right? And so if we want to do the opposite of that, we have to stop and think, what is it that I want? What is it that I currently have? How do I swap this? And for this swap, if I'm dependent on another person, it's going to require both of us to swap those things. But if I let go of the need of the other person also doing the swapping or even having this analysis done, they're not part of the story anymore. I get to decide for myself, what do I want? What do I have? Can I work with what I have? No, I cannot. So what do I need to change within myself while I'm operating on this? So think of what is causing you pain in simple terms, right? What are you struggling with? What patterns are currently there? And what opposites do you want to shift into? That's homework for your audience. If you can do that in the next couple of weeks, I guarantee you're going to feel so much more connected to your own self. Like forgiveness is not even a story anymore that we're unpacking. It's you. We're focused on you. That's the most important thing, right? So what opposite experiences are you needing to have? What would that opposite pattern be? What do you want to do instead of this? So for example, you need to change the pattern from being a disempowered person to an empowered person, an angry person to a calm, collated, peaceful person. Whatever your pattern, to the opposite pattern. So if you feel stuck and the need is to be able to move forward, think of what you are not being able to let go of. What is blocking that pathway to move forward? What is that thing? Ask yourself the question, sit with it, allow it to ooze up, and it will, I guarantee you. We're so uncomfortable with sitting with ourselves. The minute we are alone, we start scrolling, if nothing else. We'll start scrolling because we want to occupy, because being with ourselves is so damn scary that I don't know what's going to come up. And if it comes up, what the hell am I going to do with it? Because I don't know what to do with this. It's scary. We're petrified of being with ourselves. My dear sisters, if you can learn to be with yourself in the time of discomfort, a lot of your healing will start to begin just by doing that, just by being able to be comfortable with the uncomfortable feeling of sitting with yourself. It's going to reveal so many naked truths that you might not be ready to see, but they're necessary for your journey ahead, right? So that's what we're trying to establish. Like, where are you feeling stuck? What are you trying to being able to do? And take some time to really think about what you are not being able to forgive. And once you have that clarity, because this is all collection of data, which is absolutely necessary, then think about the opposite patterns that you want to create, the ones that you need, right? So when you understand what you are struggling with and come to know the opposite patterns that you are trying to create, then it is that need, it is that you need to pour the focus into, not the fact that you can't forgive, not the fact that they haven't asked for forgiveness. That's an irrelevant story for now, right? It's you and yourself and what you want and what you have and what you're working with and how you're going to change that. So when we look at our pain in this way, we can make it so much easier, a pathway to healing, because we are changing the state in our heart, in our mind, of what we don't want, right? Or what we do want, and what we might need, what needs haven't been fulfilled, what we are trying to do in a subconscious way, and just change just one belief. I don't want to burden, unless you're working with somebody, it's harder to go fast. For you, if you're doing this on your own, just pick one belief that you hold about yourself. And although sometimes there are more beliefs that you need to shift, and without this awareness, it becomes really, really difficult. So it's going to take some doing to be able to break this down and really analyze it. But you have to go to accept the truth. That's the beginning of the journey. If you are not in a place of forgiveness, instead of carrying on and pretending that you have forgiven when you know you haven't because you're triggered by that person every time, truly acknowledge that current state. Say, this is where I am, right? Does this mean that you're a bad person? No, it just means that you're acknowledging where you're at. That's the truth of you right now, right? So become completely and unconditionally present with whatever feeling it is, whatever lack of feeling you have, and that's the beginning. So I think that's the first step, but there are many different steps I can say. So the first one is obviously to do this breakdown and gather some data. Maybe next couple of weeks you do that, validate your feeling. You focus on self-compassion, so don't judge yourself. Don't say I should have done this by now. I should have, Allah, I know better. I'm a spiritual person. I should be able to forgive. I should have been able to do this. None of that. Like you don't need that. You need compassion. And self-compassion works because it helps to build an emotional safety inside of yourself. You're not resenting yourself as well as resenting the person you can't forgive. You're actually saying, you know what? I haven't been able to forgive, but that's my truth right now. And that's valid for what I've been through. But I have the ability to be able to change that, to build that confidence, to be able to have that conversation with yourself. Reframing your story is so powerful. I cannot emphasize enough. Like seeking to understand. So without excusing the behavior of the person who hurt you, try to gain a perspective by considering why that person might have acted as they did. What might have led to this? Sometimes in understanding their limitations or the wounds, it can create a sense of empathy, but you might not be there right now, and that's okay. But at least you'll be able to see a pathway. Like when I went through the divorce, I could really honestly, genuinely, wholeheartedly, compassionately be able to see that this is a person who was hugely neglected as a child. They have no idea about emotions. They can't break things down. They can't sit with themselves long enough to actually know what they're feeling. So what they're doing is they're avoiding. They're running away from the situation. That's their methodology to do that. So I'm able to like view this situation as like the outsider from and look at them from within and be able to gain an understanding of their limitations so that it softens that intensity and anger in helping me heal myself, right? And this reframing helps us to see the other person also as a flawed person rather than like a villain. Because haven't we made mistakes? We've made plenty of mistakes. There is not a single person who's listening to this that can wholeheartedly put their hand on their heart and say, I've never made a mistake. We've all made mistakes. So this shift of perspective can really help to reduce the power of that resentment that is held within. And there are many meditations, there are many visualizations. I do many visualizations. They are hugely powerful, where you're able to empty yourself of the clogging that is within you, and you're able to free. I release you of this pain. I choose peace. There are many, many different visualizations, and you're imagining yourself surrounded by light and peace and all sorts of things. This energy really helps you to shift from the past, and it helps your mind to practice letting go in a safe, guided way, and then practice letting go of control over justice. Forgiveness often requires basically the need for justice, letting go of the need for justice, right? So for the person to try and understand their wrongdoing, acknowledge that you may never receive an apology that you deserve, but that you're healing, and that healing is not contingent upon their remorse.
Right. Absolutely.
Healthy boundaries are very, very essential. So you need to have boundaries. There are exercises that I do with my clients where we write letters. We actually write a letter. We have no intention of sending that letter, but you write everything and anything that comes to your mind. You can curse on that letter. You can swear F and blind. You can do whatever you want on that letter. Anything that you would have said if there was no nothing in place. And just write it as many pages as you want. And then symbolically, you get to burn that letter. This is an exercise I do with my clients in the Universe Within You. And it's so powerful because we actually get them to bring the letters and bring like a metal bin and write the letter. We actually do it in the session, and then we get them to burn the letter. And it's like, I've actually just because it's so symbolic that you wrote everything that you felt, everything that put you through, all the hate and anger is coming out on the piece of paper, and then you're burning it. You're actually setting it alight. It really is your external that hurt and allowing the process to release the emotions.
Absolutely.
There are so many other things I can say, but yeah, I mean, just focusing on your own personal growth to reclaim your joy rather than being stuck on like being about them, not making it about them.
Okay, so Sister Uzma, we are almost heading towards the end of our program, inshallah. So I think let's just wrap up with a last powerful question, and that is that can forgiveness ever be conditional, and if so, how? And inshallah, if you can share a couple of points with us, and inshallah, we'll wrap up today's program.
Yeah, no, powerful. So forgiveness sometimes conditional, especially in a situation where boundaries and accountability are necessary for a relationship to move forward. While conditional forgiveness is often viewed as the ideal way to move forward, there are cases where conditional forgiveness may serve as a very healthy practical approach, particularly when the harm that has been done is an ongoing thing. Like it's still, you're still living the consequences of that harm, and or if there is a reconciliation that's being desired or in the process, then boundaries will be need to be put in place. So there has to be some conditions in order for you to move forward. Otherwise, you can't just forgive and move on if that person is still behaving the same way. You have to have something in place in order for you to make sure that those things don't reoccur if you're looking at reconciliation, right? So there are conditions, and sometimes they are very, very necessary. So conditional forgiveness often applies when we desire to rebuild trust with someone who has hurt us in the past, didn't take the responsibility of our heart seriously. And in this sense, forgiveness is offered as an option, but certain conditions or boundaries are established to protect yourself, to ensure that a healthier relationship can be established moving forward. For example, we may forgive someone on the condition that they work on specific behaviors. They may seek help. They may go through therapy. They may go through counseling. They may try to understand their behavior. Why did they do what they did? Why did I do? Maybe they're open to more open communications to prevent similar things from happening in the future, right? So this is a form of conditional forgiveness. It's not about withholding forgiveness to punish the other person. That's not the reason for it, but rather it's being assertive and having healthy boundaries in place that support healing for that person and also for you as well. In that respect, our needs and our well-being, while also forgiving, are all kind of enshrined within that rebuilding of trust. And sometimes forgiving someone does not mean that we, like I said, allow them back in our lives, right? So conditional forgiveness allows us to set those boundaries and protect our emotional, physical and emotional safety as well. This might be limiting contact with that person or redefining the nature of your relationships. Like, what does that look like? So, for example, forgiving a family member for past hurt might come with the condition that we see them only in certain settings now, or we see them while we are with other people, not on our own anymore. So it could be many, many different ways that we put that in a way. Another way of setting a condition in our forgiveness is that in some cases, forgiveness may feel incomplete if the other person hasn't taken the responsibility for their actions. This is a really important one because conditional forgiveness means that we choose to release our resentment, but keep the door open for reconciling. And if and when the other person expresses genuine remorse or accountability, then we know that we have that door open. We can imagine things getting back to some form of a normality to rebuild that relationship, but it would be contingent upon them holding themselves accountable, taking the responsibility to say, I did something that caused you to feel a certain way, that caused you to take certain action. I understand that. I promise not to repeat that. This is a huge level of accountability and responsibility. And you might have that as a condition. right? Because your inner peace is at stake. Because if you just go back without ever establishing, and I see this a lot, when we're doing if somebody's gone through a separation, if I have a sister come to work with me and she says, "Oh, we've been through a separation, and now he's expressing an interest to reconcile," I pose this question to them, like, have they shown responsibility? Did they say, are they accountable for what they did? Have you had that open conversation? No, he just wants to get back together, and that's a recipe for disaster, because you're only going back into the same only after a break. So that person hasn't recognized what they did, how they hurt you, how that's affected you, why you separated in the first place, what's going to change, how things are going to be different now. Nothing. We're just, okay, he's just expressed an interest, I should just run back. That's what my family wants. And this is a really terrible way of not, understanding what your needs are and how to hold the other person accountable. So many different things, but essentially, in essence, conditional forgiveness allows us to forgive while maintaining self-respect and while maintaining healthy boundaries. It is a practical approach, especially when we are dealing with people who may not recognize the harm that they cause, and you need to be safeguarded to prevent future hurt again. And so, while unconditional forgiveness is freeing, conditional forgiveness respects both our humanity and our need for security, and that creates a balance to move forward in the future.
Inshallah. So I would like to thank you so much, Sister Uzma, on today's program. You've really shared so many insightful points, and you've taken us step by step on how to forgive. What are the categories of expressing ourselves, forgiving different types of people in different scenarios. You've shared your own personal journey. So yes, there is a lot that we can take from today. And I would just like to end with another quote, and that is that forgiveness is a gift that you give yourself. Forgiveness is a way to keep the past from affecting the present and future. And forgiveness is not an occasional act, but it is a constant attitude. Forgiveness is a way of life that should be a constant attitude. And with that, I would like to end today's program. Sister Uzma, if there are any final words that you'd like to share with the audience, and inshallah, we will close the program.
Yeah. I'm so grateful for this topic, and I have no idea if I've done any justice to it, because it's such a big, vast topic, and there's so much else to be said about it. And sometimes it just feels like you're hearing lots of words, but if we can listen to it with intent and actually make some notes about the actions that you need to take out of this, I can promise you that there will be some changes. Sometimes we're hearing podcasts just in the backgrounds, and it feels good to listen to something because it feels like we're improving. But if we're not taking the action, it means nothing. It's just more collation of data. And a lot of people have the habit of doing that because they think that they're healing. They think that they're getting better just because they're listening to so many things. But collecting more and more data in your mind is not going to it's not going to change anything. Change comes when you hear something and it's practically doable, like it's something that you are willing to do. And then you take the time to sit and feel it, heal it, and go through the process and the motions of it, and move forward from that in a powerful way. And I think that's what's necessary. Imam Ali Islam says, "Forgive, but do not expose yourself to repeated harm." So even here, Imam Ali Islam is advising a balanced approach of forgiveness, and extend forgiveness, but also protect yourself from harm. Allowing conditional forgiveness when necessary for your safety and for your self-respect is very, very important. So don't feel like I have to, because we've dedicated most of the program to saying you don't need the other person to be able to forgive, and that's true. And it's very important that you have that power to be able to do that. But if there is any need to reconcile with that person, or you're still having to come contact with that person in any way, shape, or form, then boundaries are necessary. Safety is necessary so that you don't drown in your sorrow again and it triggers you all over again. So just keep that in your mind. If there's anything that you need personal support from, by all means, get in touch. I'm on all social media. I have a website as well, uzmanaqvi.com. But Inshallah, I hope that this has been helpful and supportive to your audience, Sister Sakeena. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Absolutely. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much, Uzma. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for your precious time. And thank you to all our viewers for joining us on our mental health well-being podcast with a beautiful topic of forgiveness today. And please make sure that you do like today's program. Keep supporting us as much as possible. Please share your comments and feedback. We would love to hear from you, and also, please make sure to donate generously on our website, www.lanternoflight.org.uk. And inshallah, we will be catching you up in our next upcoming conversation. Inshallah, looking forward to. This is your host, Sakeena Habib, signing off. Jazakumullahu khairan.